Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Drew and you're once again watching To The Theme Park Dude. Today's video I give my review on the best dueling coaster in the world, Stardust Racers, a Universal Orlando Resort's new theme park, Epic Universe. Before I begin, it would mean a lot if you hit that subscribe button, as well as the like button to support the channel. Now, off to the video. Stardust Racers is a mock rides dueling launch coaster that opened in 2025 along with Universal Orlando's Epic Universe, an all-new theme park with 5 highly immersive worlds including Celestial Park. This world is the home of Stardust Racers and the hub of the park, with tons of restaurants, shops, a carousel, Stardust Racers, and 4 other themed world portals that you can enter from inside this hub. Now, the main ride in this world is Stardust Racers, the dueling coaster that has 2 separate tracks, one being green and the other being yellow, that race each other throughout this thrilling attraction. Now, let's take a look at a POV of both sides of this coaster. So here we go with the POV, starting off with the yellow side of the track, which if you want to enter this line, you will enter on the left side of the queue. Now, here you go. We are launching, and this ride actually technically has 2 launches on the first main launch. So it has one kind of launches to get you to the second launch, and then that second kick is where it really takes that high speed over this first giant airtime hill. And then you go this really cool turn where you're turning back towards the station, where you're kind of going up and over depending what side you're on, and you get a really cool interaction with the queue right there. And if you're in the queue, you can also look up and see the attraction in between the, fence from the queue. But then you have these really cool bunny hills, which actually offer great airtime, and both sides have them before dipping and going around. And now we're heading towards our second main launch, where we're going to head into my favorite element and part of the entire coaster, the Celestial Spin, which this is the main difference between yellow and green. In my opinion, yellow actually does this better because you're upside down while you're going down, and if you're on green, you're upside down while you're going up. And that's really the only inversion on the attraction as well. So if you're afraid of flips or stuff like that, this is very much doable because there's only that one. And yeah, now you continue just doing these cool crossovers with the other train, some great airtime hills, some really cool interactions with the other train, and then you have the finish line right here, which actually it does vary which one can win, so that's pretty cool. And green, now you're going to watch a POV. It's pretty much the same as yellow. It's just, like I mentioned, the Celestial Spin's a little bit different, and obviously you're doing everything at an opposite turn. But this is pretty cool. You can see how you're directly dueling the other train. This coaster has a max speed of 62 miles an hour, which you would think might be a little bit slow for this attraction because 62 miles an hour is actually slower than rides like Test Track at Epcot, and Velocicoaster. But it still offers a really cool punch, and that second part of the first launch as you're exiting the tunnel really does pack a punch. And it also has a max height of 133 feet, which occurs during the Celestial Spin portion of the ride. And this ride just is incredible with the dueling aspect, where you're really feeling like you're racing the other train. And this ride also has a really cool story that a lot of people I don't think pay full attention to, and it's that the Celestians, which are the beings of Celestial Park, and have harnessed energy to be able to capture comets and race them across the cosmos. Now, there is a little voiceover spiel in the station that plays every 10 or 15 minutes that kind of gives this background, where it just says, we've harnessed the cosmos, or harnessed the comets, now you ride them, enjoy Stardust Racers. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, green and yellow, they're pretty much the same, but overall, it's a great ride experience. Now that you've seen the POV though and some of my initial thoughts, let's get into an in-depth review here. Now, Stardust Racers, like I mentioned, is by Mock Rides, which they're known for a lot of coasters actually overseas. Really, their big stuff here in Florida, specifically Orlando, is Cobra's Curse, well, in Tampa, Busch Gardens, Tampa Bay, and also Journey to Atlantis at SeaWorld Orlando. Now, Mock Rides is cool. This is, I believe, the first time Universal has worked with them for a coaster. And it's pretty cool to see them collab because there's been a lot of rumors about the Rip Ride Rocket replacement potentially being Mock, if not Intamin, and just a lot of cool stuff maybe for the future with Mock Rides, especially with their new boat system coaster that they came out with that could really be a neat creature from the Black Lagoon attraction if they ever do that expansion to Dark Universe. But yeah, Mock Rides, they're known mainly overseas with DC rivals, Hypercoaster being their big one at Warner Brothers in Australia. But over here in the States, they're not as big, but it's really cool to see them do a coaster like this because the last dueling coaster at Universal Orlando was Dueling Dragons, the B&M inverted coaster that was replaced by Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure just a few years ago. So this coaster kind of has homage to that, and is really cool to see Universal do another launch coaster, kind of taking what they learned from Dueling Dragons with, some of the mistakes in the design and all that, and kind of completely making this an entire new experience. The lockers, just like every major ride in this attraction, in this entire park, consist of you scanning your face, so that's pretty cool. So you don't have to worry about taking a card with you on the actual attraction itself, because this ride does require you to put everything in a locker, and that includes power-up bands, cell phones, wallets, car keys, loose change, anything that will get set off in a metal detector, but also anything loose in your pocket. Now, but that kind of goes the same with most high-speed coasters at the resort, such as Hulk and Rip Ride Rocket and Velocicoaster. But yeah, this is definitely the park's icon coaster. If you're gonna think of Rip Ride Rocket, which only has a couple months left over at Studios, and I guess Hulk or Velocicoaster over at Islands, this is definitely the park's signature coaster, and it's very thrilling. It's pretty intense. You do do a lot of sharp turns, big airtime moments where there's times where I'm like thrown forward if my hands are up in the air, especially during that launch. There's parts where you're kind of whipped side to side. Obviously, you have the one inversion, and depending on what side, it's either while you're going up or going down. And there's a lot of, very close interactions with the other train. So that's just a lot of stuff to keep in mind with. I have heard this ride is also one of the least accommodating rides for guests with larger shapes. So that's something to also keep in mind. But overall, Stardust Racers is still a very, very great attraction. And I absolutely love this ride. I've done it 10 times, 5 times on each side, and I'm going to get even more rides over my next few visits to Epic. There's just so many details, such as even the flux capacitor being located on the back of the ride vehicle, which is really cool. And if you don't know what that is, that's the thing from Back to the Future that Doc Brown has that makes the DeLorean go back in time. So there might be some connection and some lore there with that, which is really neat. But overall, there's just a ton of, little pieces of lore throughout that kind of make Celestial Park as a whole one giant story with the Celestians, like I mentioned earlier. But there isn't a ton of theming in the queue. You have some comet things that are around, but there isn't any big like theming structures that you're going through on the ride. And I think maybe like a rocket ship or some planet stuff or anything like that would definitely add a little bit to this experience, because once you're on the coaster, there's not a lot of theming on it. Now, let me answer the question that most of y'all probably have been asking most of this video, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, which side is better? In my opinion, I'm going to go with yellow. But also, like I said, there really isn't a huge distinguishable difference between the two other than the celestial spin moment, and I guess just if you prefer what views. And I personally like seeing Isle of Berk, which you see more on the yellow side because you're closer to that than on green. But also, you get some cool views of future expansion pads if you're on green, like right there behind the Wizarding World, and maybe even a potential 5th or 6th themed world in the future. But yeah, I mean, they're very similar. There's no huge difference, but both sides are very enjoyable on Stardust Racers. And where I personally prefer to sit on this attraction, well, actually towards the back. Now, rides like Velocicoaster, I'd say front row every time. But this, in my opinion, is more of a back row ride. And obviously, in the front row, you're going to get great views of what's ahead of you, and you're not going to have someone's head in front, and you're going to get a very clear view of the coaster track. But if you're in the back, you can see the other train more, because if you're in the front and you're leading, you don't get any of those dueling moments with the other train. If you're in the back, you see the other train going over you, going under you, crossing over. Even if you're ahead of them, you're still paired up with people somewhere on the other train because of how close these two coasters are to each other at each given point on the track. So I prefer towards the back, maybe not necessarily the back row, because there is a slight rattle towards the back of the train, I would say. That is just something that, I don't know, it's a new coaster, maybe it's still breaking in, but it's been testing for almost a year, so who knows. But there is a slight little rattle if you're towards the back, but it's not huge or anything like that. But now let's get to my pros and cons of the attraction. So starting off with the pros, obviously the dueling aspect is incredible, with the celestial spin being my favorite moment on the coaster and probably my favorite element on any Universal coaster. The airtime is great. The lap bar restraint allows for a lot more freedom with, like, having your hands up and you getting swinged side to side, which for me is a lot of fun. I know for some people, though, they would like that over the soda restraint, which there's still rides like that with Hulk and other coasters. But this ride, trust me, it doesn't need it. The launches, especially the second kick of the first launch, the intensity, the onboard audio, which actually changes from the day to night, which the onboard audio for this attraction is great. There's speakers in your headrest, so which kind of funny is on opening day one side wasn't working, but since the audio is so loud coming out of your seat, we could actually hear it from the other train. So we still had technically on-ride audio, which is pretty cool. Night rides are like a whole different experience. I could not recommend riding this ride enough at night. It's so different, and there's no lights on the track, so it's just the train that lights up, so it really looks like you're racing comets, which is absolutely unreal. And you can also see Burke at night and the rest of Celestial Park, so it's just really cool from up there. The operations are great on this ride. It can run up to 3 trains on each side, which means it could have 6 trains running at once. So even if the line's 30-45 minutes, it's always moving and it's probably way less. So that's something that I would also keep in mind. There's rarely ever going to be a super long wait for this attraction. Now moving over to my cons, there is a slight rattle like I mentioned towards the back of the train. The ride only has 1 inversion, well 2 if you count both sides, but they are separate coasters, so my argument is they're 2 separate rides, but I mean it's still Stardust Racers, so there's only 1 inversion on the coaster, and I do think the ride could definitely benefit from having another one, maybe another barrel roll, maybe I don't know, an Emmelman loop, something like Velocicoaster, or even if it was like a non-inverting loop style thing like Rope Ride Rocket, even though it's not an inversion, it still would add a lot to this layout of the attraction. But that's just me being nitpicky. I think it could also be a little bit faster at times, especially like the Bunny Hill part, because it feels like you're kind of dragging along, and I don't know. That kind of causes some nauseating, at least for me. But it does offer some great airtime, though. And also lack of on-ride theming, going back to what I mentioned earlier. This ride would benefit a lot from some, some structures throughout that just add more theming to this coaster, because the rest of Celestial Park is very well themed, but once you get on this ride and you're going through, obviously you're going so fast, so it doesn't really, or you're going fast enough where you're not going to be seeing details and stuff everywhere you go, but just maybe a couple fly through things, maybe like a comet you fly through, or just something like, or like an asteroid, or I don't know, whatever, I think would be really cool and add a lot to the experience, because unless that like part where you go towards the front of the station, you don't really see any thematic stuff on the actual ride. But yeah, overall, Stardust Racers is truly the best dueling coaster in the world, and one of the best coasters that I've ever been on. Now, I'll be making a video soon where I compare this directly to Velocicoaster and see what coaster is truly the best in the entire resort. However, this ride is absolutely fantastic and a must ride when you visit Epic Universe, but I will be answering that question in a future video, so stay tuned to that. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, please remember to leave a massive like and subscribe for future theme park content. Comment down below if you're looking forward to riding or have ridden Stardust Racers at Universal Epic Universe, and let me know your thoughts on this incredible dueling coaster. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day, everyone. See ya. Bye.